You felt it, that tight knot in your chest after you've hurt someone, even if it was accidental. Guilt can freeze you in place, yet it can also be the hidden engine that pushes you toward change. Imagine if the uncomfortable ache you feel could actually be rewired into a tool for becoming a better version of yourself. Stay with me for the next 10 minutes, and you'll discover why guilt exists, how it differs from remorse, and the practical steps to turn that pain into power. I remember a moment from a few years ago when I missed a crucial deadline for a teammate's project. I could see the frustration in her eyes, hear the disappointment in her voice, and the knot in my stomach tightened until I could barely breathe. That night I sat down, wrote a note apologizing, and then spent the next day fixing the mistake. It wasn't just the act of saying sorry that lifted the weight. It was the realization that the feeling had forced me to act. In simple terms, guilt is the feeling that tells you you've done something wrong, while remorse is the deeper, more reflective sorrow that includes empathy for the person you've hurt. Why does this matter? Studies show that roughly 80% of adults report feeling guilt at least once a week, and that chronic guilt is linked to higher stress levels, poorer decision-making, and even increased risk of depression. Understanding the mechanics behind guilt can help you break the cycle of rumination and use the emotion constructively. Here's what you'll walk away with. First, the evolutionary purpose of guilt and how it kept early humans cooperating. Second, the neuroscientific fingerprints that distinguish guilt from remorse. And third, 3 science-backed strategies you can start using today to process and transform guilt. Let's dig into the brain's secret alarm system that keeps us honest. From an evolutionary standpoint, guilt acted like an internal police force for early humans who relied on group cooperation to survive. When a member broke a social rule, say, stealing food from the communal fire, the resulting guilt signaled a breach of trust and motivated the individual to make amends, preserving the group's cohesion. Anthropologists have documented rituals of confession in tribal societies that served the same purpose, a public acknowledgement of wrongdoing that restored harmony. In cultures where shame dominates, the external judgment is the primary regulator, but in guilt-oriented societies, the inner sense of responsibility does the heavy lifting. Inside the brain, several regions light up when you experience guilt. The amygdala acts as the emotional alarm, flashing a quick warning when something feels wrong. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex evaluates the value of your actions against your personal standards, while the anterior cingulate cortex detects errors and signals the need for correction. Neurotransmitters also play a role. Cortisol spikes during the stress of guilt, whereas oxytocin rises when you seek social repair. Functional MRI studies have shown that when people feel remorse, a deeper, more reflective sorrow, the anterior cingulate cortex lights up more intensely than during a fleeting guilt episode, which tends to keep the amygdala more active. This split-screen brain activity explains why remorse feels more profound and often leads to lasting change. Psychologically, guilt comes in different flavors. Moral guilt arises when you violate an internal principle, like lying to a friend, while social guilt occurs when you disappoint a specific person, such as missing a birthday dinner. Both can be adaptive, nudging you toward repair, but they can also become maladaptive if you get stuck in endless rumination. Adaptive guilt motivates you to take concrete steps, whereas toxic guilt spirals into shame and erodes self-esteem. Remorse, on the other hand, adds an extra layer of empathy and perspective-taking. It's the difference between feeling bad about breaking a rule and truly feeling the impact of your actions on another's heart. Consider 2 everyday scenarios. A driver accidentally bumps a cyclist at an intersection. The immediate feeling is a quick surge of guilt. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. The driver may apologize, check on the cyclist, and move on. In contrast, a driver who knowingly runs a red light and strikes a pedestrian experiences remorse. The driver not only feels responsible but also imagines the pain the pedestrian endures, leading to a deeper, more painful reflection and a stronger drive to make amends, perhaps through legal responsibility or community service. Now, how do we turn that uncomfortable feeling into growth? Research points to 3 evidence-based strategies. First, acknowledge and name the emotion. Simply putting a label on what you're feeling, "I am feeling guilt about missing my friend's call" has been shown to reduce amygdala activity by about 30%, calming the nervous system. Second, engage in empathy-driven repair. Start by seeking clarification from the person you hurt, offer a specific apology, and propose a concrete way to make things right. Studies reveal that sincere apologies trigger an oxytocin surge, strengthening bonds and facilitating forgiveness. Third, practice self-compassion reframing. After you've taken responsibility, give yourself a pause. Inhale. Repeat a kind phrase like, "I am learning and growing," and exhale. Self-compassion has been linked to lower cortisol levels and protects against the descent from guilt into depression. If this is blowing your mind, hit that subscribe button and let's keep exploring together. If you're still with me, let's peel back another layer of this emotional tapestry and see how guilt and remorse can actually reshape the way we connect with others and ourselves. Imagine a moment when you missed a birthday, a simple oversight that left a friend feeling forgotten. The first wave that washes over you is that familiar knot of guilt, a quick, uncomfortable flash that tells you you've let someone down. It nudges you to send a message, maybe a heartfelt apology, and perhaps a promise to make it up. That is the functional side of guilt at work, prompting you to repair the breach before it widens. Now, picture a deeper scenario. You promised to help a colleague move, but you backed out at the last minute because you were exhausted. The guilt still appears, but underneath it a more reflective remorse builds as you consider the stress you added to your coworker's day. You start picturing their struggle, hearing their sighs, feeling the weight of their disappointment. That empathetic resonance is what transforms a fleeting guilt into a lasting commitment to act differently next time. It's the internal rehearsal of a better self, a mental simulation that primes you for future choices that align with your values. Research in social psychology shows that when we move from guilt to remorse, our brains engage in what scientists call perspective taking. This mental shift is not just a fancy term. It's a measurable change in activity across regions that support empathy, especially the temporoparietal junction. When we truly imagine another's experience, we activate pathways that make us more likely to engage in prosocial behavior. In other words, remorse is the engine that powers not only personal growth but also stronger, more compassionate communities. But what happens when that engine stalls? When guilt lingers like a storm cloud, refusing to dissipate, it can morph into shame, a more corrosive feeling that attacks our sense of self rather than the specific action. Shame tells us we are fundamentally flawed, whereas guilt says we made a mistake that we can correct. This distinction matters because shame often leads to avoidance, isolation, and even depressive spirals. The key, then, is learning to catch the transition early, to step back and ask yourself whether you are judging the act or the actor that is you. One practical way to intervene is to set up a mental stop-and-check routine. When you notice the familiar flutter of guilt, pause and ask 3 quick questions. What exactly did I do? Who was affected? And what can I do right now to make things right? This simple checklist can redirect the emotional surge into constructive action before it spirals. It also reinforces the brain's reward system, because completing a repair task lights up the ventral striatum, giving you a small but meaningful dopamine boost. Over time, this creates a positive feedback loop where fixing mistakes feels rewarding rather than punitive. Another subtle yet powerful tool is to cultivate a narrative of growth. Instead of labeling yourself as a bad person after a misstep, reframe the story as, "I am learning to be more attentive." Narrative psychology suggests that the stories we tell ourselves shape our identity and future behavior. By consistently using language that emphasizes learning and improvement, you reinforce neural pathways associated with resilience and reduce the grip of shame. It's like rewriting the script of your inner dialogue, swapping out self-criticism for self-curiosity. Now, let's bring this home to everyday life. Think about a time you felt guilty about a missed deadline at work. You might have sent a quick apology, checked the box, and moved on. But if you let that guilt linger, you might start doubting your competence, fearing that colleagues view you as unreliable. To break that cycle, next time you feel that tug, pair the apology with a concrete plan, Outline the steps you'll take to prevent future slips, perhaps by setting a reminder or breaking the project into smaller tasks. When you communicate that plan to your team, you not only restore trust but also demonstrate accountability, turning a moment of discomfort into a showcase of professionalism. Conversely, consider a scenario where remorse can deepen relationships. Say you accidentally hurt a friend's feelings by making an offhand comment. A simple, "I'm sorry," might soothe the surface, but true remorse invites you to explore why that comment landed the way it did. You might ask your friend, "Can you tell me what part of what I said felt painful?" and then listen without defending yourself. That open-ended inquiry signals that you value their experience as much as your own intention. It can transform a fleeting awkwardness into a deeper bond because the other person feels truly heard and respected. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced that shift from a quick guilt flash to a lingering remorse that changed the way you acted? What strategies have helped you turn those uncomfortable feelings into something constructive? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading your stories and learning from the community. Remember, guilt and remorse are not enemies to be eradicated, but signals that our social wiring is trying to keep us aligned with the people we care about. By recognizing the difference, naming the feeling, and channeling it through empathy, repair, and self-compassion, you can harness these emotions as catalysts for personal and relational growth. If this insight resonated with you, give the video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who might need a gentle reminder that feeling bad can actually be a good thing. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the mind's hidden mechanisms. Your support fuels this channel, and together we'll keep uncovering the science behind the stories that shape our lives. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep questioning, keep feeling, and keep growing.